So I would like to pass off the mic to Dr. Laynor, who is a who is the one of my co-directors here at the Meta Research Collaborative. He is a systematic review librarian in the Health Sciences Library, as well as the course director for the evidence synthesis course at the Vilcek Biomedical Graduate School. And Greg.
Liz, this really came out of just Liz and I talking every day about our shared research obsessions and wanting to bring people together around it. And now here we are in this room. And thank you to all of you who are here with us in this room or here virtually. There's something exciting about bringing people together and creating something new, especially in a time that many people are experiencing as a time of crisis or anxiety or uncertainty, especially in the research system, especially in the United States. So what better time to create something, right, and to bring people together? I want to start by talking about my definition that I obsessively worked on to try to come up with a way of showing the relevance of meta-research in this moment, right? So Liz and I would talk about meta-research with people. People said, oh, that sounds nice. That sounds, interesting. Sounds a little academic or esoteric or in the weeds. We're just trying to make sure we can, our research can get funded and do we have time or resources for meta-research? So I said, we need a way of framing meta-research that shows that it's about intervening, right, in actual real-world needs and problems and coming up with solutions for them. So the definition that I came up with after, waking up in the middle of the night multiple times is research on research to improve research. And to test it, I asked several large language models in the NYU Ultraviolet AI, what do you think of this? Can't remember which one. I think it might have been Claude said, Greg, that's actually a really good definition. So I was very pleased to see that. So that's what's up here on the slide is research on research to improve research. And it was very maybe surprising that after sort of Liz and I talking about meta-research and wanting to do something here and getting buy-in for it, to then see many of the themes of meta-research, like rigor and reproducibility, open access to research appear in an executive order this May, right? In what is being called gold standard science. Now, what is gold standard science and what are the motivations for it or implications for it? That would require a whole other symposium, right? But it is kind of the environment in which we're operating in. And there are many things that meta-researchers have been trying to put on the agenda that do show up in this executive order. I realize there are other things in the executive order, but about the importance of research reproducibility, right? The importance of transparent sharing of data and methods, collaboration and interdisciplinarity, right? The importance of publishing negative results, right? That can be a valuable research contribution. So, not only is meta-research not esoteric or marginal or just an academic exercise, it's in an executive order, right? In a time when there's a lot of debate about what should be funded as research, right? How should research be conducted and reported? Who should be conducting research? We then saw an NIH implementation plan based on the executive order just in August, and we see, again, meta-research themes highlighted as priorities for the NIH. And the new director of the NIH, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, is himself a meta-researcher, right? He also has opinions that many of us might not endorse, but he also does, in his agenda for the NIH, highlight initiatives, right? About the importance of research replicability and funding replication studies, right? Which historically have not been high prestige or high priority or highly funded, right? But the importance of trying to reproduce existing studies based on open data sharing and so forth, right? So I know it's kind of sometimes when people, that there's a lot of uncertainty, right, in this moment, right? But there are maybe opportunities where meta-research could be a rare, unusual, common ground where people who might have very different ideologies and motivations might have shared goals in improving the research system. That might be where we are at in this moment. So that's part of where we're kind of bringing this meta-research collaborative into the world, maybe to build some of these bridges. I want to share an example of meta-research from Jay Bhattacharya and his collaborator, Mikko Palikan, that came up 5 years ago, where they actually used publicly available data, Medline, right? 25 million records in Medline, the database behind PubMed, right? To actually do research on research funding, right? What does the NIH fund, right? I'm interested in this not just because it's by the current director of the NIH, but also it's really great example of meta-research methods at work, investigating real-world problems and opportunities in the research system. So what they did was analyze all of the Medline articles, right, at that time. It was, I think, up to 2016 they were able to do, and linked it to any NIH funding acknowledgements, right? And then what they did is text mining to identify when research ideas first appeared in the literature and mapped those research ideas, right, to NIH funding. And what they were able to find is that between 2010 and 2016, the NIH was more likely to fund ideas that were 7 to 25 years old, right, than older ideas, foundational research, right, or what they call edge science. So ideas that had only entered the research system, the research literature, right, within 7 years, right? So their conclusion, right, from their analysis was that the NIH was more likely to fund edge science in basic research than clinical research, and also that the NIH rate of support for edge science, right, new research ideas that had only emerged in the past 7 years had actually declined in the 2010s compared to the 1990s. And so just things to think about, right, in terms of, now you need an NIH and an NIH budget for any of this to have consequence, but it shows even in terms of methods, right, how you can use the entire research literature to investigate what's being funded, what are emerging patterns, right, where could new funding be directed, how could new incentives be created. And so this is an example of how the research literature is itself data on the research system. So it's not just the data within the studies themselves, right, that matters, but you could think about the literature, and you could look at it at various scales, is itself data about the research system. And there's some methods that can be used to investigate this data on the research system, include textual analysis, which is essentially what Bhattacharya and his collaborator did in the study I was just sharing, where you can detect patterns and trends at various scales. Citation analysis, where you can map networks of influence, collaboration, impact, or potential collaboration across fields, right? What's being studied, where, right? How do disciplines relate or not? And some of this are citation metrics, and there are debates about, the citation metrics themselves, and perhaps creating new metrics that could have different indicators, right, of different priorities in the research system. There's also literature-based discovery, where you can actually mine unexplored connections to generate new hypotheses based on the literature itself. So let's say there's a relationship between A and B research area and B and C. Could A and C potentially be related, right? So you could mine possible new hypotheses from the literature itself. And then, of course, evidence synthesis, which is what I specialize in, and we always think the thing we specialize in is the most important thing in the world. So evidence synthesis is systematic reviews and scoping reviews, where it's not just summarization of the literature, right? This is my inbox every day, is clarifying this, but really the idea behind these methods is to evaluate the rigor of the research itself, to integrate results, and to reconcile conflicting findings, right? So in a moment of uncertainty or skepticism about the quality of research studies themselves, these methods can be real ways of intervening in some of these debates by looking at multiple studies in a field and detecting patterns and gaps and so forth within them. And some of my work in the moment is trying to make these methods themselves more rigorous and more feasible to do. Has anyone done a systematic review before in the audience? So scoping review, these often take much longer. I get in my email, we want to do a systematic review over the weekend or over the break. And 2 years later, they're coming back to me, we've got these peer reviewers said we didn't do this and that. So these can be very valuable when well done. Most of them are not. Most of them kind of just add to the glut of the research literature, which no one has time to keep up with, but really well done systematic reviews can both look at research patterns, trends, and findings at scale, and also synthesize the literature, right? And the quality of the literature itself. And so is there potential for AI, various forms of AI, whether it's large language models or older machine learning approaches, which might be effective for some use cases, right? Can we automate reliably certain parts of the evidence synthesis process without undermining the rigor of the method, but actually maybe even improving the method itself? So some of the work that I'm doing in this area with the Cochrane collaboration, some of you are probably familiar with Cochrane from Evidence-Based Medicine, which established a lot of these methods for systematic reviews. So for the methods journal, I was invited to edit a special issue on AI and evidence synthesis to really kind of apply the idea of evidence-based medicine, right? Where you evaluate treatments before their implementation, right? To apply that to AI implementation itself, right? To do meta research on research, to create an evidence base to inform implementation of AI in steps of the evidence synthesis process itself. So we've now actually I think it's about a dozen contributions that evaluated AI techniques for different stages of the process, whether it's study screening or data extraction or meta-analysis, detection of publication bias, so forth. So really putting forward that to inform AI implementation moving forward. And then also work that I'm doing, I was invited to be on a committee for the national academies to update the guidelines that were first established in 2011, what works in medicine, or I can't remember the exact title of it, but basically to disseminate the kind of meta research that's being done on AI and evidence synthesis, as well as patient participation in evidence synthesis and dissemination strategies and so forth, to really create and disseminate best practices moving forward for systematic reviews and other forms of evidence synthesis. And then lastly, I want to, as Liz was talking about, we have the NYU Meta Research Collaborative, and thank you for being here for our first event together. And what we hope to do, and we were kind of in our conversations, this really just started as the two of us, talking about, we'd like to have a thing, we'd like to have a center, some kind of, or a lab to be able to bring people together to do this kind of work, but also not just meta research that we ourselves are doing or want to do, right, or to train others to be able to do, but to bring together people across various schools and centers across the institution, across NYU, and we're starting to do that here today, to build collaboration, partnerships, perhaps new research collaborations, or just sharing of ideas. And so you're welcome to stay in touch, connect with us on the website. If you registered, I think you're now on our mailing list. And hopefully this will be the first of many events and gatherings in a time that is confusing, I think, for all of us. And, but there are possibilities to do research on research to create new opportunities in the research system, including here at NYU. So thank you.